Hello, my friends. Welcome once again. Luiz Lima here, broadcasting from Orlando, Florida. You are watching us on Spiritism, a closer look, and this is Kardec Radio, so welcome. Just a side note, yesterday it was July 4th, 2023, and July 4th is the anniversary day of Kardec Radio. So 12 years yesterday. Unbelievable. What a blessed day that was. 12 years. So thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight, we're going to take a closer look at justice and natural rights. Justice and natural rights. This is on the Spirit's book. It's on part 3 of the Spirit's book, chapter 11. So there's a section of questions from 873 through 879. So we're not going to necessarily read questions and answers, but that's what we are going to use for tonight's study. So to get started, justice is one of these things that seem to be regarded as a relative concept. Different people see justice in different ways. What may be just for you might not be, I might not follow you on that. You might be unjust for me and just for you. So it's complicated, especially nowadays. A lot of our words are being redefined because of what's going on in society as a general, humanity as a general. So to address this, Allan Kardec, in the Spirit's book, he puts this smart and logical set of questions and get the answers from the spirits in a very interesting way, so that the sequence of questions make a lot of sense. So let's go through this a little bit, and let's see where we get, what conclusion we can take from all of this. One of the questions that Allan Kardec asks the spirits is precisely this one. This one, I'm going to read the question. Is the sentiment of justice to be found in nature itself, or is it a result of acquired ideas? Very interesting questions. Is something innate in some way, or it's something that we don't have in the beginning as simple and ignorant, and it comes alive as we go along? The answer is very straightforward. This is what they say. This is what the Spirit says. It is so natural, so it's natural, not an acquired idea. It is so natural that you revolt at the thought of an injustice. And sure does, yeah. When we see injustice, especially with ourselves or people who are loved ones, family members, people who are close to us, when we see injustice towards them, we revolt. That's a natural tendency. So that's exactly what the answer is. Something natural. It's like it's in us somehow. The spirits also tells us that moral progress, so that would be the part that the sentiment of justice could be an acquired idea. It's not, but they're going to address that too. Moral progress develops the sentiment of justice, but it does not create it. So as we go along, morally improving, that's the moral progress, we will have a better sense of justice, but it's not born with the progress. It's born because it's natural. It's in our hearts. God has placed this sentiment of justice in the human heart. It's in our inner being. And that is so because sometimes, for example, notions of justice among simple and primitive people might be better, more exact than the notion of justice among very knowledgeable individuals. Meaning the intellectual progress not necessarily addresses or explains better or worse notion of justice. It's not intellectual. It's born with us. It doesn't depend 100% on progress. It does later on. We will improve our sense of justice. And then Allan Kardec takes that answer and he brings the next question. You see, it makes sense. The sequence that he uses for these questions makes a lot of sense. So this is what he's going to ask next. If justice is a natural law, which is what the Spirit just explained to us, so he's using the answer to bring up the next question. If justice is a natural law, how come people see it so differently, one from the other, to the point that one individual considers something just and the other unjust? The same thing, the same situation, the same event, right? How come? If it's a natural law, shouldn't be the same for all. And here's the idea behind it. Our judgment is affected by our passions, human passions. And that alters the sentiment of justice, which causes us to see things from an erroneous point of view. It's, for example, that's where the concept of emotional intelligence comes from. That's exactly this. Consider this situation, for example. You are arguing with somebody, and the thing gets more aggressive and discussion heats up, and suddenly you just go into an extreme, or one of them just go into an extreme situation of rage completely, and starts just talking and not listening, making gestures, throwing things on the floor. In popular words, you lost it. So the person just lost it. And he becomes acting unreasonably. So unreasonable acts and actions and unreasonable judgment. And that will go on for a few minutes. Once the person stops all that, rage and all of that, he needs time to come back to normal. It will come back to normal, but it needs time to regain the intelligence, get away from the state of emotional intelligence completely different than what they should be in their normal day. So that's one of the things. So when you are in this extreme rage or revenge or whatever it is, our judgment is different. We do unreasonable things, unreasonable actions, unreasonable judgment. That's why we hear this all the time. If you're very upset with something, if you're very, you're hating some situation or so, don't say anything, just hold it, because you're going to say something that could be, you could regret later. And the reason is because of that, the emotional intelligence drops completely to the point that intelligence disappears for that amount of time. So these passions are stronger as we look into the spirit scale. I don't know if you remember that. We spoke about this before. Let me bring it to you here. Spirit scale. Here it is. So as we go down to the bottom of the scale, so spirits that are less advanced, on those spirits, the human passions are much more or much stronger. And if they fall into that situation, rage and revenge and all of that, it will impact their intelligence a lot. And they will most likely regret later. But that's the answer from the spirits. That's the idea behind the answer. Justice is a natural law. And the proof is when we, lose it, we don't have a good sense of justice. We are unjust with whoever's in front of us, even the ones we love. And usually those are the ones who suffer more because they spend more time with us. our partners, husband, wife, kids, they are with us all the time, or most of the time, let's say. So they are the ones who are going to have to share that moment with us. So then Allan Kardec asks, okay, we're talking a lot about justice, but how can we define justice? Give me a clear definition of justice so we all align our thoughts. And the answer is very straightforward. It is justice consists in respecting the right of others. Okay, so now just the concept of justice brings another concept, which is the right of people, the rights of people. So obviously, the next question that Allan Kardec is going to ask is about the rights. So he asks, what determines these rights? How are these rights determined? And the spirits will answer also straightforward. They are determined by two things: human law and natural law. All right, so they will explain to us what this is. Think about the human laws. Those are the laws that we as humans have to write to keep the society going. So the purpose of human laws is to address the needs of a society, a group, depends on what level you are, a country. So human laws are created to address the needs of a society. However, these laws are mostly disciplinary laws. You know, it will line up situations and how we should behave. So they are educational laws, disciplinary laws. However, and because of that, they are subject to time and space. They will change with time and they will change from one location to another. For example, if you steal something from somebody in one place of the world, you might just be, that's okay. We're not going to address that. On another part of the world, you might end up in jail, for example. So it depends on space. It depends on where you are. It depends on location, countries, states. Here in the United States, not all states have the same law for all the things. So something that is considered, let's just say, a crime in one state might not be considered a crime in another state. And also, these laws are subject to time. You see, if that wasn't the case, we would still have the same laws as in the Middle Ages or even before, which were absurd for our days, our time. So human laws can vary with the progress of the society. They will have to vary to allow and give space for the society to evolve. If the law never changes, it will prevent the society from evolving. The laws were going to get in the way. So they have to evolve. Human laws have to evolve. And if they do not evolve, the rights stated by the law become obsolete. Right? So the human law is not the same as the divine law, also, but that's another story. So let's concentrate on us here, humanity, writing our own laws. So they will have to change to allow for the society to evolve. So, because our laws are made by us, imperfect third order spirits, humans, what happens is the rights of humans do not always conform to justice. That's interesting. That's what the Spirit tells us. The rights of humans not necessarily always conform to justice. Which justice? The justice. So our laws, they only regulate certain social relations in our lives. So there are things that must be regulated by the laws. But in doing so, we might be not in conformity to divine justice. We will, because society will evolve and we will get there. And then the other part is, so this is about the human law. Remember, rights are based on these things: human law and natural law. So that was about the human law. So the natural law. Well, the natural law is even more interesting, because this is what the Spirit tells us. There's a golden rule. And the golden rule is, don't do to others what you don't want others to do to you. And that is not only the golden rule, it's a simple logic, by the way, very simple logic. But this is what is used as a basis for the natural law. So Spirit tells us that God has placed in the human heart, the rule of true justice, which is that one. Don't do to others what you don't want others to do to you. So I'm going to read what the Spirit tells us. God has placed in the human heart the rule of all true justice through the desire that all have to see their rights respected. We want our rights respected. So by the golden rule, we need to respect others' rights as well. If you are, it continues, if you are uncertain of what you should do for your neighbor in any given circumstance, ask yourself what you would wish others to do to you in a similar situation. Golden rule. God could not give you a safer guide than your own conscience. And it continues. It becomes even more interesting. The criterion of true justice, right? If we're going to talk about true justice, what is used as a basis? What is the criteria? So the criterion of true justice is, in fact, to desire for others what we would desire for ourselves, and not to desire for ourselves what we would desire for others, which are different things. I'm going to say this again. To desire for others what we would desire for ourselves, not to desire for ourselves what we would desire for others. You see, what changes is the focus. When we focus on somebody else and we follow the golden rule, we accept and understand we don't have to accept the golden rule, but there are going to be consequences. So if we focus on doing good for others, I'm already doing good for myself. So we should take, this is what they propose, the spirits. We should take our personal desire as the starting point to understand the natural law. This way, we will never do anything for our neighbor except what is good. We wouldn't do evil things towards our neighbor because we don't want them to be done to us. In all ages and in all belief systems, humans have always sought to enforce their own personal rights all across. So if I want my rights to be respected, the best way to do this is to respect somebody else's rights. And the spirits give us a phrase that is to wrap up the idea. I'm going to just read it to you. The sublimity of the Christian religion was to take personal rights as the basis for the rights of the neighbor. Very interesting to take our personal rights as the basis for the rights of the neighbor. So the rights, human rights, are determined by human law and natural law. The human law is changeable because society evolves, and the natural law is used as a basis our own rights. So we don't do to others what we don't want them to do to us. And then Allan Kardec asks another question, which is this: since humans can be mistaken as to the extent of their rights, what can be done so they know their limits? That's an interesting question, because I might just think that my rights are, unlimited. I want to do anything I do, nothing stops me. So I need to know what are the limits to the extent of my rights. And that's the question. How do I know that? The spirits will tell us this: the limit of the rights that each one recognizes for his or her neighbor in relation to him or herself under the same circumstances and vice versa. So where is my limit? Is the same limit that I want to give to my neighbor. It's simple. It's simple logic. So do I want to have unlimited rights? No, because I would have to give my neighbor unlimited rights, and it's going to be trouble. So we assign their rights by understanding that we have to have limits on ours. And there's a last question here, which is a follow-up from this one. This is what Kardec asks: but if all attributed to themselves, okay, if all of us attributed to ourselves the rights of their neighbor, what happens to subordination to superiors? Wouldn't that be anarchical for all positions in power? It's an interesting question. What happens to, if we give all the rights exactly the same for all people, what happens to subordination? So there's somebody here which is superior to me on my work, my group, my whatever club. What happens? So they will say that all individuals sense their own strength or weakness, and will always know to show a certain deference to those who deserve it because of their virtue and wisdom. It is important to point this out so that those who think they are superior may know their duties and may deserve for deference. Subordination will not be compromised when authority is conferred upon wisdom. That's interesting. When authority comes or is given to somebody because of their wisdom, subordination will not be compromised. Now, if that's not the case, so authority is given to somebody by themselves, or by a group who elected somebody, and now they don't think that person has authority anymore. What happens is situations where insurrection and revolt, rebellions, because those who were given the authority, they are not up to speed on that. They do not deserve their authority because they don't have the wisdom that we expected them to have to be in that position of power. And that happens a lot in countries, states, social groups, cities, counties, all positions who are who put people in power. They are subject to that. We can, for example, elect somebody or choose somebody to be the leader of a group, and then that somebody becomes the leader, and later on they don't really have the wisdom that we initially thought they had. So their authority will be compromised because we're going to have some sort of revolt, rebellion, insurrection, and so and so. So this is what I wanted to bring to you tonight on this chapter. The chapter has a few more questions. It's an interesting chapter. Uh, there's a lot to be said about it. So this is like a compilation of all the questions and answers real quick. So Spirit's Book, Part 3, Chapter 11. The name of the chapter is The Law of Justice, Love, and Charity. And what I mentioned today, what I worked with today, was questions 873 through 879. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. We will be here next week, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Be well.